Greetings, everyone. This is Brandon Jones, and welcome to the MACMH Minute for October 2024. And in today's MACMH Minute, we're going to be focusing on Halloween. Fall is here, pumpkins are out, pumpkin spice everything is happening, and you may want to talk to your children about this fun, festive season. And we had two topics to cover today when it comes to Halloween. The first is having hard conversations about costumes with children, and the second is shedding light on Halloween fright. So let's dive right on into it. Having hard conversations about costumes with children. Halloween is a time for children's imaginations to become reality. Their wildest dreams of who or what they want to be come to life. Fairies, ghosts, goblins, pop stars, veterinarians, dentists, even train conductors. Though there are hundreds, if not thousands, of wonderful Halloween costumes for children and adults of all ages, sometimes our kids are drawn to costumes that are not appropriate. Let's talk about some of the situations that may arise headed into October and how to have age-appropriate conversations about cultural appropriation and safe and creative exploration. So, two things that I think is important to highlight with this conversation. One is cultural appropriation and cultural stereotypes, and two, the mental health safety of young people, which is on the forefront of so many people's minds, given how we look at social media and this new concept of digital well-being. But what about these few and far between social engagements that we have that are not online, like trick-or-treating and Halloween? We're going to talk about that here in a moment. But let's start with cultural appropriation and cultural stereotypes. So, what do you do if your child asks you to dress up in a costume, or let's say they see a costume sold in a store or somewhere online that depicts a culturally inappropriate or somewhat of a cultural stereotype that they may have seen or heard on television? And how do you navigate such a conversation? I think this is a great learning opportunity and moment for parents, caregivers, and even mentors and youth workers to engage in a healthy dialogue about respecting people's culture and respecting yourself, and how sometimes making fun of how someone appears or who someone is may cause harm to them and may put you as the individual doing it in a very uncomfortable and dissatisfying position. And it's important to have these conversations, and I don't think we need to pick on everything, but just point out a few things that are age appropriate for your child and things for them to understand, and then give them space to ask questions. Children learn by doing, and they express themselves by actions. So providing them a space to share, to act things out, to ask questions is some of the best encouragement you can do when having a conversation around cultural appropriation. And also, don't put a lot of pressure on the young people to just fully understand it after one conversation. It may take a few different times, a few different engagements for them to really get the concept of what you're sharing, especially if they're younger. It might not always click right away. So I would stress not to make a huge deal out of it, but to do create a space where you can have these conversations is a healthy thing to do, especially when we're talking about cultural appropriation and cultural stereotypes in Halloween costumes. Then that transitions into mental health safety. So there are costumes that could be activating for children, costumes that depict things like people who may be unhoused or homeless, things that may have to do with COVID and the pandemic, or things around body shaming. There's even things that they reference such things as self-harm, suicide, and even guns and weapons. So, Halloween is full of things that can be interpreted many different ways. So one thing that I would encourage you to do if you're uncomfortable with your child asking to dress up in those such things is to navigate it with, again, an open space, but also not blaming your child for being interested in things, but explaining to them why that's not a healthy option or choice for them. And also know that there will be other kids that they see with it. There can be friends or peers or other people in the neighborhood. And for your child not to necessarily think negatively of those children, they're just making a different choice based on how you want them and how they should want themselves to be mentally and emotionally healthy and safe as best as possible. So you don't want to get into the blame and shame and what's good and bad. You want to keep it in a frame and keep the conversation in it from a perspective that is more positive and comes from the place of what we call the growth mindset, which is focusing on healthy actions and not bad things or upset things or things that are negative. And you want to just give your child reassurance that they're making a choice that's good for them and doesn't fully include how other people may feel about it, but you want to keep their action in a positive place for them and how they're encountering these various different costumes in this engagement. So it may be an uncomfortable conversation, but I think as long as we're being more proactive versus reactive with the conversation, it can be helpful. So just find a healthy way to talk about costumes with your children and the interaction of Halloween, and also find healthy alternatives. Instead of the costume with the big butcher knife, maybe they have a different type of object or accessory with the costume, and that may even unlock some creativity with the young people in your life to find that alternative that makes sense, or they can put their own fancy spin or twist on a particular Halloween costume. So for other mental health tips around Halloween season, whether you're talking about trick or treat, Halloween at school, when children may want to stop, dressing up and even stop going trick or treating, and various different developmental stages, check out our website, www.macmh.org. That's macma.org for other good resources. I remember being that kid and thinking I was too cool and too old to go trick or treating, and that was an interesting transition. I think I was about 11 years old. I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And I remember the year before that, I was a Power Ranger. That was my last Halloween costume, was a Power Ranger. And I pretty much haven't really dressed up as an adult. I think, yeah, actually, I was Count Dracula once with my kids, but that was it. I haven't really participated in Halloween from that standpoint. I'm usually the person who is walking the kids around or hanging back and passing out candy. But either way, whatever your role is, just make sure you're being supportive and you're present and you're listening and allowing space for your children to express themselves, and you're giving them age-appropriate feedback when they do have questions. All right, let's talk about the other conversation around Halloween, which is shedding light on Halloween fright. So, Halloween, though filled with fun and creativity, may bring out new social pressure, anxiety, and even fear for children. Let's talk about some of the fears and anxiety that children may have around the holiday and highlight some of the strategies that parents or caregivers can use to navigate it. First, let's talk about common fears. So, common fears that children may have around Halloween, such as the fear of darkness, scary costumes, haunted houses. These are all, things that children go through. For the longest time, and this is just on a personal note, my children were terrified of houses that were very well decorated for Halloween. Like, we're talking about they have tons of stuff in the front. They got the big blow up Halloween things. The lighting's changing on the. They used to be terrified to go to those houses, and it took a lot of we're talking about 3 years of trick or treating, of encouragement for them to just try things out. And for the longest, trick or treating in my household lasted for about 15-20 minutes because my kids would get so terrified that they wouldn't want to go anymore, and they would just end up, picking candy out of the bowl from us passing candy out in their neighborhood. They got over it though. I think they grew to a point where they've gotten over it. But I remember that was a huge problem, even to the point where we would go to like a grocery store or Target, and my kids would be terrified once the Halloween stuff is put out. They would not want to go down the aisle or even close to the section where the Halloween stuff is because they were just so terrified of just the displays. And I'm just was like, it was just the most bizarre thing. And I would do everything in my power to try to convince them that it's safe and it's okay and it's just decorations and not in their minds. So these fears are real for these kids, whether they're real fears or not. It's a reality for your child at the moment. The best thing you can do is try to just reassure them that they're going to be okay. That is, it's make believe, it's not real, but they're going to respond the way they're going to respond. And I think our job is really just to show up, be present, and listen as much as we can. All right. Another thing that is important is understanding positive Halloween experiences as well. And, the importance of discussing how to be safe, how to have fun during the Halloween season. Fun costumes instead of spooky ones can be helpful. So just engaging your children around the fun aspect of Halloween and not allowing them to stay stuck in what they may be fearful of or scared of, but realigning that focus around the things that they can enjoy around Halloween. Obviously candy, obviously dressing up, obviously spending time with their friends, but also it's a moment for them to be creative, to think outside the box, to show up as a different character and engage in a different personality or a different mindset or just different vibe for the kid. That can all be positive things, especially when there's so much pressure for young people to perform a certain way. This may be one of the few times they can, quote unquote, let their hair down and just kind of live and be themselves and have some fun. So make sure we're allowing space for that. One thing that we definitely wanted to cover, and we probably should do a little bit more on this now that I'm thinking about it, is accessibility during the Halloween season, and kids who have all different aspects of neurodivergent, how they interpret Halloween. So, for example, children with autism may use a blue bucket or pumpkins as a symbol to indicate that they may not be able to participate in all the traditional aspects of trick or treating. So this has been a movement that has been created throughout the U.S. to kind of help young people who are somewhere on the spectrum of autism and help them navigate this experience to the best of their ability without being overactivated, overstimulated, given the nature of some of the things that may go on during the trick or treating or the holidays, or the not the holiday season, but the Halloween season. Sorry, excuse me. And there are some ways that families can create a safe trick or treat experience for those children, and how those who are heading out to do some of the trick or treating can assist with either receiving the candy or even handing out the candy if they find themselves on the autism spectrum. So there are some accessibility needs that children do have, and it's important for us to be mindful of those and be aware of those. And then for the folks who are listening to this podcast but they don't have children or they don't have grandchildren that they're participating with, think about the people that may be coming to your home and what they may be going through. And you might need to do something that's accessibility wise so that people know, hey, we are passing out candy, leaving the light on. And this is a safe place for you to be on. Here's some safe thing for you to look at, and we're a very affirming and open household, willing to share this beautiful Halloween holiday with you and amazing candy and other things that may be given out. And then the last thing I'll cover for shedding light on the Halloween fright is social pressure. So the weird in between between children face when they're not sure if they are too old to dress up or maybe they still want to. And how can Halloween be a time that heightens social pressure from choosing costumes to engaging in trick-or-treating activity? At some point, your children are going to age out or they're going to transition how they participate during Halloween. It's important for us as parents, caregivers, and youth workers just to support them no matter how they engage in this holiday. But there may be some boundaries crossed, right? If you have a 14-year-old and they want to dress up as Bluey, do you allow them to do that? They want to be Peppa Pig. Do you allow them to do that? At some point, we might want to think about what are the most age-appropriate engagements. And if they do want to participate in something that may seem like it's above or below their age level, how can they do that in a healthy way for themselves, where they're not in this kind of confusion about whom they are, what they want to do. I think it's healthy that anybody who wants to participate can participate, but make sure that we're setting them up where this peer pressure thing doesn't become a bigger stressor than it already is for many of them, and that's just the engagement of trick or treating. We haven't even talked about choosing costumes and how much anxiety that can provide and produce for some people. So, again, this is an important season. There's social pressure, there's accessibility concerns and needs, there's even common fears that may show up. But it's important that we highlight the positive experiences that Halloween can have, and that it is a collective engagement. Even if you have, middle schoolers or high schoolers, they don't. If they do go trick or treating, they don't want their parents to be hanging out. They want to have a little fun themselves. So how do we put enough trust in our kids to support them, and the young people in our lives to support them to go out and have fun and do their thing? So that's pretty much it for our MACMH Minute this month. Just want to do a short podcast for you all and just share some of my thoughts and ideas. Be sure to share some of yours with us, and we'll try to post them and put them out there as we enter into this holiday season. I hope everyone is having a great transition into the fall season. The leaves are changing. You can smell the fall in the air. Football is here. I'm super excited. I'm definitely going to enjoy this season, and I hope you will too. With that, be safe, be constructive, be well, and we'll see you next time. Take care.